רק שנייה.
Hi to everyone. We are now recording. We count into the clouds. Yeah. On behalf of Dharma friends, hello to everyone. It's nice to see you all here. Geshe will join us. And before she is starting, I just want to announce that this week we will have some Zoom meeting with our teacher, and all of you are welcome to join us. Let me just say it quickly. This Tuesday at 6 o'clock Israel time, our teacher, Jado Tulku Rinpoche, is going to be with us on the Zoom. It will be, he will share us with his thoughts, and there will be a little talk after. Then in Hebrew, in Thursday, in 6 o'clock, with the monk Tekchuk, we are going to have some prayer. This is hard days for all of us, sorry about my English, and all the suffering around, and the heart and everything that we have. Many of our people are still kidnapped in the prison of the Hamas, so it will be about that. Then in Friday, 10:30 in Israel time, Geshe Dorje Demadol will meet with us on the Zoom, and he will join us for prayer for the dead and the kidnapped people, and then he will speak about his thoughts. Then in Saturday, I still don't know the time. The head of the Sakaya school will join us. So everyone is welcome to come. And the link to the Zoom is from the website of the Dharma Friends. So I think that there is a lot of wonderful teachers that gives us from their time to join us and to pray with us. So it will be nice if people will join this Zoom. Hi, Geshe.
Hi. Thank you for that announcement. It's good to know.
Thank you. It was raining in Israel, so some of us it was good for them, some was bad for them. But the weather is different now. The situation is the same, but we are here with open hearts. And thank you that you are be with us all this time, and that you choose to teach us. So I
Sure.
just made you co-host.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so let's start. Setting the motivation, one of the most important parts of any Dharma session. So we start with some mindfulness meditation. Breathing meditation. and then to inspire us, but also to understand what we ourselves can attain. Visualize in the space in front of you the embodiment of all enlightened qualities appearing in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni, who's inseparable from your Lama, appearing as a monk clad in the saffron robes, seated on an open lotus, a sun and a moon disk. With a body that is made of pure light, radiating its amazing qualities, in particular, great compassion and profound wisdom. Serving as an object of refuge and pointing out our own future Buddhahood and thereby our resultant refuge. Which of course we can only attain in dependence on all other sentient beings. Which is why we should visualize that we are surrounded by all sentient beings. To remind us why we're here. And getting a sense that they're not separate from us, but a part of us. A part that we're strongly connected to. And then let's generate affectionate love. Based on a sense of interdependence. And the understanding that they're just like us. wanting to be happy and satisfied. And wanting to be free from problems and other unwanted experiences. And based on that understanding, try to generate a sincere sense of closeness, acceptance, and deep affection. Each and every sentient being. That connects with sentient beings, not on their superficial, coarse level of their afflictions, but on a deeper level. And then taking to mind the fact that not only do they have countless different sufferings, but also they are afflicted by destructive emotions such as ignorance, attachment, and so forth, that control their actions of body, speech, and mind. And aware of that, let's then generate great compassion. That is an affectionate awareness that wishes for all sentient beings to be free from all obstructive, all destructive emotions and the resulting sufferings. And moreover, the wish that may I be able to protect them from their afflictions, their misperception of reality and so forth, and all the limitations and sufferings these give rise to. And that aspiration then grows stronger, giving rise to a deep inner strength and courage in the form of the special altruistic attitude that is determined to dedicate our life and our future lives to that goal, helping sentient beings to overcome all their limitations, all their faults, and their resulting sufferings. But since right now we're unable to help ourselves, leaving aside all sentient beings, let's generate based on great compassion, based on the altruistic attitude, the sincere wish to become fully enlightened, to actualize the potential of our mind, full Buddhahood, for the benefit of each and every sentient being, so that we're able to inspire and guide them to reach that same state. And so without letting go of this motivation, this mind of enlightenment, let's recite the prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the accumulation of merits, of practicing generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Great, okay. Now, well, I said last time I'll start with questions in case there are any. So please go ahead. Any question you have before I start with the Lamrim? Yes, please, Shmuel.
Yes, so I have a question. I'll try to present it in a form of a dilemma. Okay. So as far as I understand, letting go of self-centeredness is a practice exclusive to the Mahayana. Now, if that is correct, then why were the disadvantages of self-centeredness that were presented mainly about how it harms ourselves, not how it harms others? If that is incorrect, however, then why is self-centeredness not even stated amongst the causes in the presentation of causes of suffering in the fundamental vehicle?
Okay, great. A very important question. Well, first of all, basically, self-centeredness is not unique to the Mahayana or the universal vehicle, or the Nalanda tradition, the vehicle of the Nalanda tradition. It's not unique to that particular tradition. Self-centeredness is a type of attachment. And as we've heard, well, attachment that arises, of course, from the misperception, the basic ignorance or basic misapprehension of reality. And in order to attain self-liberation, forget about enlightenment, in order to become self-liberated, we need to overcome that misperception. And since it gives rise to self-centeredness, therefore, by eliminating root ignorance, the root misapprehension, we automatically remove the self-centered attitude. Now, I could imagine the reason you're asking this question is that in some texts, it seems to suggest that as a person who's attained self-liberation, if they don't aim for enlightenment, they're self-centered. But that is not the type of self-centeredness we're speaking about here. It is only in terms of, it's just relative. They say in relation to, if you compare an arhat, someone who's attained self-liberation, and a bodhisattva, or even the Buddha, if you compare the two, a Buddha can do so much more for sentient beings. I mean, an arhat is amazing. However, they're limited. An arhat is still limited. Still, first of all, has the potential to become fully enlightened, to do so much more. And in comparison, of course, to a Buddha is limited, doesn't have the same capacity. So if a person who has attained arhatship that doesn't aim for enlightenment, well, someone may come up to them and say, look, that's kind of, you're just looking after yourself. That's kind of selfish. Of course, they're not selfish in the sense of self-centeredness. They've overcome any kind of attachment to I and mine. However, just in comparison, in relation to this incredible love and compassion they could potentially generate, that's how it's put. So that it can be misleading. Okay, so therefore, self-centeredness, self-cherishing, as we discuss it here, is an object of obstruction to liberation. So it has to be eliminated to become liberated. Okay, then as to the second part of the question, well, in terms of the Mahayana, why doesn't it talk about harming others, right? The self-centeredness. Why do we keep talking about it? It harms myself. Am I not giving into my self-centeredness, right? That was also a question you had, right? It was, yeah. So to answer this, well, at this point right now, let's face it, in my case, my self-centeredness rules my life. I mean, it rules my life. Unfortunately, I bring my self-centeredness all the way to my Dharma practice. It's present. It's always there, right? If it finds a moment to sneak in, it's right there. And so I need to be careful with this self-centeredness. I need to work with it. I spoke about it last time. I shouldn't identify it with it to such a degree. I'm my self-centeredness, because that is just depressing, and of course it's not actually in accordance with reality, but let's not underestimate it. It's always there. Okay, it tries to sneak in. It's because of my habit. It pops up. I allowed it to run wild for so long. Okay, it's there. And as I said, I need to work with it. If I suppress it, I'm in trouble. So working with it right now, if I keep thinking, oh, I have already a lot of problems. I have suffering. I have unwanted experiences. I don't want them. My self-centeredness is all behind me. Oh, yeah, I don't want this, right? My self-centeredness totally agrees with me. Therefore, for me right now, if I say, well, if I get rid of self-centeredness, I won't harm others, my self-centeredness doesn't really care. You see what I'm saying? My self-centeredness cares about I, me, and mine. And it's ready to pop up. So if I tell my self-centeredness, I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about it separately, but there are so many different types of minds that can pop up, and they lie dormant sometimes, but they're part of my psyche, of my psychological makeup. And I need to be aware of them and work with all of them. And so self-centeredness is a huge part of that, which is why right now, my own suffering is much more of a motivating factor to overcome my self-centeredness than that of others. Once a person is advanced enough that their own suffering, they don't care, right? Then you don't need to encourage them to work on their self-centeredness or to decrease it, because they're already on that level when they do it anyway, when they really deeply care for others. So a bodhisattva is on such a level, you don't need to convince them, overcome your self-cherishing. No, they're there for others, and they work on it the whole time. So they don't need that kind of motivation. There's one part I think I haven't answered yet. Have I answered all your questions, or was there something I left out? I think there were 3 parts to it.
Why is it not stated explicitly amongst the causes of suffering in the fundamental vehicle?
Oh, okay. I think that's more of a matter. It's more a matter of terminology. I mean, we find in the different traditions. I mean, even in the universal vehicle traditions in China and so forth, different vocabulary is used, but basically in the fundamental vehicle tradition, or in the different traditions of the fundamental vehicle, they talk about attachment, craving. And so, as we said, attachment is a type, self-centeredness is a type of attachment to the I. So it's included in that. But I guess when the Buddha taught these different traditions, for different disciples, the emphasis might have been a little different, because that's just what they needed. And so the vocabulary, the terminology may have been different according to the needs of the disciples, and it was passed on in a different way. And of course, in this process, it evolved, and I don't even know whether in Sanskrit, I don't know what the Sanskrit word for self-centeredness is, whether it appears to us and it comes across in the same way to us if we hear it in Sanskrit. So in Tibetan, Rang Tenzin, it's like this. Rang means self, Tenzin means kind of to cherish, or to cherish, basically to see as important, and in this case more important than others. So it's very much based, of course, on the Tibetan terminology here. Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. Any other questions?
Yes, I'd love to ask something. I'm new here, by the way.
Yes.
I wanted to know if bodhisattvas and others want to help others, how do they do it without being attached and having a desire to help others?
Yeah.
That is my greatest problem. I dedicated my last year. I am 18 now. I have finished high school, and I have made a climate organization for youth, and that really destroyed me mentally.
Interesting. Okay. Well, how do they do this without being attached? I mean, without moving towards bodhisattvas. Let's just take ordinary beings, right? Being attracted to the universal vehicle, these practices. So as ordinary people, we start practicing love, compassion. How are we not going to get attached to Buddhism? First of all, right? The Buddha Dharma attachment. Then your teacher. Then your tradition, this tradition. Yes, it happens. Like I said, when we start off with the Dharma, we bring all our balagan, we bring all our problem, all our destructive emotions, we bring it into the game, we bring it into the Dharma. But then as we proceed, of course, ideally speaking, we become, the thing is, like, when you work to become a Buddha, when you practice the Bodhisattva path without being a Bodhisattva yet, of course, the practices that are most important in the beginning are those of the fundamental vehicle, which is why it's called the fundamental vehicle. So all the practices you find in the Hinayana, as it's sometimes called, or Theravada, but that's the words we're more familiar with, but I'd like to use the word fundamental vehicle, because that's how you can translate the word Hinayana, as in, like, not low, but foundation, right? The foundation. So the Theravada tradition, the fundamental vehicle tradition, provides us with all the practices we need to mainly focus on initially. Okay, so part of that is renunciation. And that is working with our own attachment, becoming aware of it. It's a great challenge, but as you then progress, okay, I'm thinking my tradition is better than others. I'll work with that attachment. I'm attached to my teachers, or I don't know, my center, my sangha, etc. Okay, I need to watch out. What is attachment? How does it work? It perceives something as superior than others when there's no real basis to that, right? Thinks that's better and others are inferior, etc., exaggerating the positive qualities. So to be aware of that. And so as you progress, ideally, these attachments are reduced. So attachment in the way you just described it, attachment towards Dharma practice. In a sense, it's like there's a difference between desire, ordinary desire, like the wish for something, and an afflicted desire, like attachment. There's a difference. So there's nothing wrong with wishing for something. That needs to be clear. So a bodhisattva, at some point, they reach a state where even though they still have the potential for attachment to arise, but it's no longer there. It's no longer active. It doesn't control their lives. And in that way, they have the wish to benefit others, but it's not this obsession. You see, what's important to know about attachment and afflicted desire, as I like to call it, so an extreme, like one of the afflictive emotions, like a desire that is described as an afflictive emotion, is that it's the way it perceives its object does not accord with reality. That's an important aspect. So why does it become attachment? What makes it? What is it? It's actually a mind that in terms of its basis, it's the same than every other mind. It's the same as every other mind. It perceives an object, it responds to an object, etc. But there's an extreme aspect to it. It is fallen into an extreme. Where does that extreme aspect come from? The first step towards generating attachment is exaggerating the positive qualities of something. If that process doesn't take place, you can't be attached, right? So if we're attached to another person, we exaggerate their positive qualities, and then our mind kind of clings to it, it holds on to it. But a bodhisattva works very much towards seeing things in accordance with reality. And so therefore, the desire to help others is not an afflicted desire at some point. It's like, it's realistic. It makes sense to help others because we're interdependent, because we are part and parcel. We're all part of humanity, part of sentient beings and so forth. It makes sense to work for the benefit of other sentient beings. It doesn't make sense to not do so. So totally rooted in an understanding of reality, then they have a non-extreme desire to help others. That's the difference. So it's not fallen into an extreme. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much. I argued about it a lot with my psychologist.
Okay. Well, arguing is good, debating, right?
Yes,
so keep
in
debating.
a good way, not...
Yeah. No, I understood. Yes, discussing it, like that's a very good way of learning and finding where you still have questions. So continue to debate.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Yes, sure.
May I ask something, please?
Of course, Leor.
In the last teaching, you mentioned that there are two kinds of bodhicitta, conventional and ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimate is actually emptiness, but you said, however, it's affected by bodhicitta. How is it affected by bodhicitta?
Okay.
I mean, more than by inferential cognition that he had before, and union of insight and calm abiding, and everything else.
You just said that ultimate bodhicitta refers to emptiness. No. Ultimate bodhicitta does not refer to emptiness, but it refers to a mind that realizes emptiness directly. Okay. But it's more than just that. It's more than just that. It is influenced by bodhicitta. Okay, so this idea of being influenced, let me give you an ordinary example, how this works. First of all, in the context of answering Shmuel's question, am I saying your name right? Is it Shmuel? Shmuel?
Shmuel,
okay.
Yes.
Shmuel, okay, great. So in the context of Shmuel's question, I kind of also mentioned that all my activities are influenced by self-centeredness. Even without self-centeredness becoming active, it can influence my actions. Now, to take another example, let's say I fall in love, right? That's a very strong emotion. If I fall in love with someone, then all my actions are influenced by that feeling of being in love with someone. Clouds are pink. The sky is blue, although it's raining, right? So in terms of a very powerful experience, such as falling in love, all my actions, my thoughts are influenced by that. On a negative, kind of taking it from a negative aspect, when I'm grieving, you know, I just lost, I don't know, someone really close to me, then all my experiences are influenced by that. The sky seems duller, the food doesn't taste the same. Okay, having established this, so therefore, it is possible for one mind without being there. So let's say I'm grieving right now, but the grief is not active. I'm thinking of something else. I'm eating, I'm busy preparing the food. So the grief lies dormant, but it still affects my preparing the food, my eating the food. Similarly, when we start to practice the Dharma, when you generate love and compassion for other sentient beings, it's not possible for our mind at the same time to reflect on their emptiness. Okay? So it's like you think of love and compassion, you meditate on love and compassion. And then if you choose to now meditate on their emptiness, for instance, well, you leave aside this emotion of compassion, etc., and now focus on the fact that they don't exist inherently, etc. So despite our mind at this point having a certain limit in terms of not being able to take to mind both at the same time, they influence each other. If, for instance, I meditate on love and compassion right now, then in a few hours, if I think of emptiness, the mind of love and compassion that lies dormant now, because I'm reflecting on emptiness, allows it for me to get a better understanding of emptiness. It may not be obvious to me, but there's always, due to this, it gets a little easier. And then my understanding of emptiness in turn influences my love and compassion. So they influence each other, they enhance each other. And at some point, when you become, the more advanced you are, so bodhicitta, of course, at some point you are able to generate bodhicitta, and you are able to realize emptiness conceptually. Initially, it's only a conceptual, intellectual understanding, but still this process of influencing each other is still present. Bodhicitta on one hand, and the mind realizing emptiness. To realize emptiness, do you need bodhicitta? No, of course you don't, because if you practice the Theravada tradition, if you practice the fundamental vehicle, you don't need bodhicitta realizing emptiness. But in this case, in the case of the universal vehicle, you practice those two together. And they enhance each other, they influence each other. And so a bodhisattva who's realized emptiness first conceptually, and then bringing it together with a deep level of concentration called calm abiding, reaching a level that is a union of calm abiding and a special insight into emptiness. Well, again, at this point, bodhicitta is very much influencing that mind. It's enhancing it. It's making it stronger. And then eventually, this mind, having become so strong and having become so stable, it is able at some point to realize emptiness directly. And with the influence of bodhicitta, of course, ever present. And once that mind that realizes emptiness directly, which is heavily influenced by emptiness, heavily influenced by bodhicitta, when that mind arises for the first time, that marks the moment when you have attained ultimate bodhicitta. That's the mind that realizes emptiness directly, the ultimate nature. It realizes the ultimate nature of reality directly while being heavily influenced by bodhicitta. Leora, does that answer your question?
Yes.
That was a yes. Okay, great. Good. All right. Any more questions?
Yeah. When you talked about equanimity, you said it would we meet other people.
Sorry, I don't see you. That's Vada, right? I recognize your voice, but somehow you're not.
Orit.
Oh, sorry, Orit. Okay. Orit, why don't I see you? Let me just look for you. Orit, there you are. Okay, great. please go ahead.
Okay. When you talked about equanimity, you said when we meet other people, then our mind goes like, dislike, don't know. But what I noticed is that my mind goes like this all the time. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I want to choose coffee, then it goes, I want this one, I don't want this one. I choose a shirt, I like this one, I don't want this one. I go buy a toothpaste, the same thing, I don't know. So I was wondering if we can use, because during a day there's far more opportunities to train the mind, but I wasn't sure if it's because the reasons that you gave does not apply to objects. So can we use the mind to train it?
Interesting. So when you stand in front of the shelf with the toothpaste, because I remember
all toothpaste, my mother's or.
I remember standing in front of those toothpaste shelves in Israel. I'm thinking, oh, if I knew some Hebrew. But then I always remember sometimes I can read, there's some English on them. But anyway, I just pictured that. Can you use this at that moment? Well, I mean, of course, I guess you could. I don't think there's any fault when it comes to inanimate objects, right? But it's still interesting to see the mind kind of having that tendency, like, don't care.
Don't know.
Right? So that interesting tendency. And with toothpaste, it's not a problem, of course, but with other sentient beings, it is a huge problem. But I don't know whether we have aversion towards toothpaste. I mean, there's attachment, yes. But oh my God, that Colgate, I can't stand its presence.
No,
take it off.
It's not aversion, but like there are toothpaste that are more salty, so I know I don't like them. Or
okay, yes.
I mean, it with everything. You can say it with yogurt, with cheese, with milk, with clothes. You can let me take me to the airport and tell me where do you want to go, and then I can tell you I want to go there. I don't want to go there. There I haven't been. So there's like far more opportunities to train the mind to be non-discriminate in a way.
Yeah. This is the first time someone asked me this question, so I need a moment to think about it. But I think there's something to it. It's really interesting in the sense that just recognizing our mind's tendency, first of all, recognizing it, and then also recognizing our sense that there's something intrinsic in this or that object, right? When you look at this, there's something intrinsic. Let's take the toothpaste or the food, a sense, oh, it's intrinsically good. So this is good, this is not, and the rest I don't care. So it's an opportunity to also recognize this tendency of, there's some goodness coming from the object, when actually it comes from our own mind, based on what we like, how we experience a certain toothpaste, how we experience a certain food, what is tasted to one person isn't to the other, and so forth. So there's definitely an opportunity to recognize that tendency that is combined with the sense there's something coming from the object. And of course, if we recognize that, then in our interaction with other people, it becomes even more important. So to recognize this tendency with everything we do, when it comes back to I, of course, and this is intrinsically what I need, this is intrinsically good, etc., right? That sense, recognizing that, and then with other people, being there right away. And of course, as I also said before, that first moment of just like, don't like, don't care isn't a huge problem. The biggest problem is that, well, it's kind of like a reflex at this point in time. But the worst problem is that, of course, we then follow it. We don't let it go. Our actions in our interaction with other people are very much influenced by it, right? I mean, like if I'm with a crowd of people, let's say you hang out with people, you don't seek out the ones, oh, let's sit with the ones I don't like. We don't do that, right? Ooh, stay away. And so I think what's good is to recognize that tendency in ourselves, also with other objects, of course, getting the sense of there's something intrinsic in that person, etc. And then work with it to undo this habit by going, okay, I just caught myself having that tendency, like, dislike, don't care. And in particular with other people, to then go, oh no, but look closer, check again. Those things that I perceive in them, they're totally superficial. I don't even know whether I'm misperceiving them. And again, I have the sense it's intrinsic in that person. I may generalize, etc., etc. I mean, it goes on endlessly. So to conclude now, I think it's very helpful what you described. If you don't find it overwhelming, well, to watch that tendency, become aware of it, and bring in the sense of like there's something intrinsic in the object, to recognize that. But then, of course, to practice mainly with other people in terms of not giving into that like, dislike, don't care tendency. And of course, I'm not saying don't hang out with your friends, by the way, but just to recognize that, yeah, that we have a tendency to, we deprive ourselves of meeting some beautiful people. And of course, on the other hand, in terms of our Dharma practice, all sentient beings equally, well, that poses a huge obstacle when it comes to that. So yeah, I agree with you, Orit. I think that's a good opportunity to practice in that way. Yeah, thank you for that. All right, any more questions? You're welcome to ask. Let me just check. Okay, there aren't any questions. All right, then let's start with the Lamrim. Okay, thank you for all those questions, by the way. So you're welcome to ask any more. I mean, ask more. You can write to me as well if you like to. But first of all, let's go to the Lamrim. Yeah, here we are. Can you all see the outlines of the Lamrim?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Now, as to equalizing and exchanging self for other as part of the Lamrim technique or the Lamrim practice, well, first of all, as we can see here, well, last time we went through these points, I started off with the disadvantages of self-centeredness to give it some thought. The fact that, as I mentioned earlier, our lives are very much influenced, they're very much controlled by our self-centeredness to such a degree that we are slaves to our own self-centeredness. Many people have heard me talk about this. This is something one of my teachers, Geshe Kelsang, has once taught in one class. I remember him saying that we are under the control of our self-centeredness to such a degree that what we do for, I mean, in order to give in order to gratify that kind of mind, we would never do for anyone else. So let's say another person told you, do this for me, get me a coffee, have a shower, now take a bath, now do this, like how our self-centeredness keeps telling us, do this, do this, do that. We would never do this for another person. And if we had to do it for 2 weeks, I mean, without pay, right? I mean, we don't even get paid for it. It's like our self-centeredness, it's kind of like another person telling us do this, 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 and the other, right? So from the moment this, that, and the other. So the moment we wake up in the morning, it's like, oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. Oh, I don't want them to talk about me. I don't want to be like when we talk about when we consider the 8 worldly dharmas. So I don't want any displeasure. I only want pleasure. I want gain. I don't want any loss. I want to be praised. I don't want to be criticized. I want to have a good reputation. I want to be liked. I don't want to be disliked. So our self-centeredness very much revolves around these 8 aspects. And of course, those are just, of course, there's so much more detail to it. So we're very much controlled by that mind, making us miserable and keeping us on our toes, keeping us extremely busy. There's no time to relax. There's no time to relax. We can never really be peaceful as long as that mind is constantly looking for the 8 worldly dharmas. That is, avoiding, of course, loss and criticism, etc., and striving for pleasure, and so forth. So there's so many disadvantages to self-centeredness. I mean, forget about, of course, giving rise to, as I said, the afflictive emotions, other afflictive emotions, karma, and so forth. Even without going in that direction, this mind is so powerful. It is so powerful. And it's annoying. It's annoying. If it's not there, there's peace. If it's not active. So when do we experience actual peace? When this mind isn't active. So sometimes during breathing meditation, just being mindful of the breath, we consider that to be very peaceful. A lot of people like breathing meditation when the self-centeredness is not there. That is the troublemaker. Okay. And then, of course, the advantages, cherishing others. When we cherish others in the form of being generous, for instance. There's been some research. I listened to a program the other day, and there's been some research on the kind of happiness when you really, out of a sense of unconditional generosity, if you just give to someone, the happiness of giving is much greater than the happiness of the person who gives is much greater than the happiness of the person who receives. So it's this generosity, unconditioned generosity means you cherish the other person, you cherish the recipient, you rejoice in their happiness of receiving something. And so just looking at the advantages of cherishing others from that perspective, for instance, where scientifically it has been established that this kind of giving, where you totally cherish the needs of the other person, gives you much greater happiness. And again, another reason why I don't want to be controlled by something that turns me into a slave of my own self-centeredness, whereas it's been scientifically established, if you cherish others in the form of generosity, for instance, you feel much better. And of course, we don't need scientists to establish this love and compassion. And these are all minds that are based on cherishing others. We feel better. We feel good. Our worries are nothing. Our worries are only a problem if there's self-centeredness that tells us, oh my God, this molehill is a mountain. We turn molehills into mountains. Okay. So based on that, to really think of it, when are we free? We cherish others. There's peace. It's so interesting how when we cherish ourselves, there's an obsessive quality. When we cherish others, there's a peaceful quality. Cherishing a person is the same. But if it's the self, there's a problem. If it's another person, there isn't. Isn't that interesting how our mind works? So, having talked about these two, so right now, it's like I, me, and mine, my happiness, etc. It's the cause of all the trouble in this world. Cherishing others is the cause of all well-being in this world. And on top of that, as we've seen last time, when it comes to others and myself, I have a sense I'm more important in terms of my own happiness. I'm more important. I'm the one who's really looking after myself. If I don't look after myself, who will? Right? That's the kind of sense we have. If I don't do everything, to gratify my own needs, etc., who else will do it? That's the sense we have. But actually, we forget others are at least equally important. Well, let's leave out at least. They're equally important for our well-being. I went through it last time in terms of our physical needs, food, clothing, accommodation, in terms of our mental qualities, just worldly mental qualities, education, knowledge. I mean, Wikipedia doesn't just pop up on its own. There are other people involved in that, and so forth, and so forth. That, and course, on a spiritual level, even more importantly, on a spiritual level, I cannot actualize my fullest potential in the form of the awakening of a Buddha without all sentient beings, right? The greatest quality, the greatest blissful state we could ever attain, being enlightenment, I can't do it without all other sentient beings. So just myself, I want to reach that enlightened state, that amazingly, I mean, we talk about benefit of other sentient beings, but in actuality, it benefits myself in the most profound way. There's no other state that is as beneficial. Therefore, others are equally important, and cherishing myself has proven to be so troubling. Which is why, having gone through these three, it totally makes sense to focus on others' well-being, if not the same, but even more so, possibly, to focus on their benefit more because they outnumber me. So far, I've been cherishing my own happiness, my own well-being. So to give it up and now focus on the well-being and happiness of others. Now, when I say give it up, in the West, we often have a sense, this kind of altruism, this kind of compassion requires self-sacrifice. In the sense, like a self-sacrifice in the sense of giving up your own well-being, giving up your own life. That's not required. That's not a good idea. Why? Because how can I benefit others if I give up my own life? If I, stop eating so other people have more food, stop drinking so other people have more water. I mean, to put it in those extreme terms. That's not meant by this. I need to keep strong and healthy to be of greatest benefit to others. So that kind of self-sacrifice, of course, if the situation requires it, a bodhisattva may, of course, sacrifice his or her life. But I'm not saying that this is a necessary requirement. In some situations, it may come up, but it's not a necessary requirement. In fact, we need to look after ourselves for the benefit of others. But the motivation is different. The motivation is not because I want to be healthy and good looking and strong and so forth for my own benefit, but for the benefit of myself and all other sentient beings. And it's okay to include ourselves as part of what we're working towards. But since myself is outnumbered by others, well, it kind of makes sense that I focus more on the benefit of others. But how do I get there? Well, through these 3 points: self and others, equal. So the way I prefer the sequence here is disadvantages of self-centeredness, advantages of cherishing others, and then realizing others are equally important to my own benefit as I am myself. I mean, of course, I'm also important, but others are equally important. So in that sense, you equalize self and others. Equalizing self and others basically just means understanding that others are equally important for my benefit. And since that is true, and since self-centeredness has given me such a hard time, well, in the same way as I've been so concerned for my well-being, this deep wish, my well-being, my reputation, my pleasure, my gain, now it's for others. Now it's for others. And something Geshe Kelsang also said in this context, the same teacher I mentioned earlier on, who described this self-cherishing or the self-centeredness as a kind of a slave owner, if you like, or being a slave to the self-centeredness. So he gave the same example, or he gave, in that context, he gave another teaching, or he gave another instruction where he said, visualize you are the other person, just in your meditation. So visualize, actually, this other person is you and you are the other person. And see whether you can actually cherish this other person in that way. Now, this is a little strange when you first hear that. Of course, we know we're not that other person, but just you put yourself in the other person's shoes to such a degree that you think, I'm that other person now, right? In a certain situation. And if you do this, then this automatic sense, I need to look after myself. So you then look after this other person. And Geshe-la's, the way he explained it was like, you get a sense, oh, this is fun. This is fun, this other person. So you can break this habit of like focusing just on this being here, but then focusing on the other. So it's just a matter of breaking this habit and finding joy in that, right? Okay, anyway, so this is part of your practice of the Lamrim for this following week. These points, number 1, and then we'll go back to the text. Okay, just to remind you, we spoke in the beginning, homage to compassion, of course. There was a short explanation from the point of view of the author, or this unbroken lineage that goes back, well, goes back all the way to the Buddha, but also, of course, includes great masters such as Selingpa. We also heard that in terms of these teachings, they're so powerful. They're like a diamond when it comes to overcoming self-centeredness, which is one of the main goals of this particular text. It's like the sun, a medicinal tree, all in terms of its power of overcoming that self-centeredness that so much controls our life, and that especially at this point in time when things are difficult, where we're living at the time of the 5G generations, when it's much harder to spiritually practice. But on the other hand, this being the case, it's much more effective if then we utilize our practice, we utilize every moment, even as Orit said, when you buy a toothpaste and so forth, to transform them into the path by practicing the Dharma. So we have this opportunity. Therefore, this is extremely precious, especially, at these hard times. So the author reminds us of that. And then basically we start the first of these 7 points. Obviously, there's a basis, a preliminary that is required in terms of recognizing precious human rebirth, impermanence, and so forth. I've mentioned them. And then the second point, which is really the most important point, is to train ourselves in the awakening mind. In other words, to train ourselves in bodhicitta. However difficult it may be, but I'm talking to Israelis. I mean, you build a whole country out of the desert, it's like, come on. I'm thinking a lot of Israelis are used to adversity, are used to difficulties, and have learned to overcome it. So in this case, well, how can it be? Of course, it takes time. It is difficult. It's not easy. But if we keep doing it and we're determined to do it, well, sooner or later, we'll be able to generate that kind of mind. And of course, this is not just true for Israelis. This is true for anyone. And great masters in the past have shown us how to do it. So if they can do it, why can't we do it? So that's like the focus training in the awakening mind. That is the main practice. And doing so, number 3 is, of course, there's going to be problems. Going to be a lot of problems, a lot of obstacles. It's predetermined, it's pre-programmed that there are going to be obstacles, karmic obstacles and so forth. So the good thing is we can use them instead of going, oh gosh, I can't practice. No, we welcome them and learn to integrate them in our practice to such a degree that our practice advances significantly by taking adverse conditions, obstacles, in other words, problems, onto the path, and in the sense of turning them into a cause of awakening. And then the next point is like, how do we do this in this lifetime? How do we practice? And what is the measure of having trained the mind properly? What is the measure? And next comes a commitment that is required to deepen that training, and then even deeper than that, the precepts, kind of rules we need to abide by. So in that way, these 7 points are explained really beautifully. They give us a beautiful guideline. And this is true not just at the time of, well, when Geshe Chekawa was around, like a few hundred years ago. Now, even nowadays, it works just the same way. Just the same way. And it's said to be, this practice is said to be, this particular text is said to serve as a powerful basis for the practice of the 8 verses of mind training, for instance, which is very, very advanced. But with this, if we practice this particular text, our mind gets prepared to practice the 8 verses of mind training in a very effective way. So I've listened to some teachings on the 7-point mind trainings, and the teachers, they usually very much emphasize this, or at least 2 teachers did. So I listened to, for instance, no, never mind now. Okay, so presentation of the preliminaries, the basis of fast training the preliminaries. We've gone through this. And the second point now is training in the awakening mind, which is the main practice. We've already heard conventional, there's the conventional awakening mind, there's the ultimate awakening mind. In terms of the order of generating them, of developing them in our own continuum, the order is first the conventional awakening mind is generated, and afterwards the ultimate awakening mind is generated. It makes sense, because if the ultimate awakening mind, or since the ultimate awakening mind refers to the mind that directly realizes emptiness and is influenced by the conventional awakening mind, that is bodhicitta, as we would ordinarily refer to bodhicitta, it's the same as the conventional awakening mind. So it makes sense that first you must have the convention, you must have developed the conventional awakening mind, or you must have developed conventional bodhicitta, because otherwise how could it influence the ultimate awakening mind? Therefore, first you develop conventional bodhicitta, then ultimate bodhicitta. But in terms of their order, for some people it's helpful to hear about the ultimate awakening mind, about emptiness and so forth first. Emptiness, and in this context, the possibility of experiencing emptiness directly, before you teach conventional bodhicitta. But in this case, the order is conventional bodhicitta first, and then ultimate bodhicitta. All right, so we've already gone through it. Banish all blames to the single source. We've done that at the beginning, of course, and very much also now as part of the Lamrim section of this class. Towards all beings contemplate their great kindness. Yeah, it's not easy. We discussed it in terms of past lives as well, but also just from the point of view of our interconnectedness, and that in some way that, unbeknownst to us, I mean, other people's actions and so forth may actually have a great impact on us. And of course, just from the point of view of Dharma practice, without anyone obnoxious, how we're going to practice patience? Without someone doing something that is very difficult to forgive, well, how can we practice forgiving? And again, we need to emphasize we forgive the person. That doesn't mean we have to forgive the action, because that's different. Okay. And not forgiving the action is not a problem, because we don't hold aversion and hatred towards the action. We hold it towards the person. And in that process, harm ourselves greatly. Okay, so having considered all this, the next part is to train ourselves in what is called donglen in Tibetan, or in English, giving and taking. So I'm going to read. Train in the 2, giving and taking alternately, so first giving and then taking. As to the sequence, begin by taking from yourself. Place the 2 astride your breath. Okay. Now, this is one of the most powerful practices we can do. It is not easy, which is why the instruction given here is that we may start with ourselves. Okay. And we use, of course, the breath. You're probably all familiar with this practice. So in the case of giving and taking, the goal is to focus on all sentient beings. And then visualize as you breathe in. Okay, I'm taking the sequence here, although giving is explained first, but the way I explain it, I start with taking. So as you breathe in, you visualize all the sufferings, all the limitations, the afflictive emotions of all other sentient beings. You breathe them in, you take them on in the form of, let's say, dark smoke. And as you breathe it in, this black smoke, which is all the afflictions, all the limitations of other sentient beings, you breathe them in, and that black smoke enters your heart, center of your chest, and then the center of your chest is your self-centeredness in the form of a rock, or whichever visualization you want to use here, in the form of like a hard rock. And as you breathe in that smoke, that hard rock is destroyed. It destroys your self-centeredness. And then when you breathe out, you give all your positive qualities, all your virtue, all your happiness, everything good about your life, especially your positive potential, your positive karmic actions, and give them to other sentient beings. And as you visualize it coming from your heart, well, it increases, it multiplies. So it's not like you're deprived, you're depleted of any kind of virtue. No, it's multiplied. And in the form of white or pure light, it radiates out, and you give it towards sentient beings. Okay, so it's really, you visualize this, but it's an extremely powerful visualization from so many points of view. And you place the two astride your breath. So starting with the breath, well, since it's not easy to visualize that, especially, I mean, how long is a breath? So to visualize this every time, it's difficult. And naturally, we probably breathe deeper into our bellies, which is a good thing, especially when you're stressed. So just from that simple perspective, you take deeper breath, more conscious of your own breath. But what is more important is it habituates our mind to help others. And your brain doesn't know whether you're doing this, you're actually doing this or not. So just from a neuroscientific point of view, you're creating new synapses in your mind of benefiting others. So that is extremely important in terms of habitual tendencies. It also gives an incredible courage. It gives an incredible, it's a booster when it comes to self-confidence. So you visualize, you take this on, and it generates a sense of joy. Like I'm taking this on myself, even though it's just visualization. But it's like anything. When any activity we do, we go through it in our mind so that eventually we can actually do it. So let's take an athlete, for instance, or like a gymnast, you're going through this difficult movement. First, you train in your mind, you go through the movements in your mind to then be actually able to do it. So it's a similar process here. It's a very powerful way to prepare our mind. But since it's difficult taking on all of the sentient beings suffering, although we're not doing it, but it may seem overwhelming, which is why Geshe Chekawa said, begin this practice by taking from yourself. So you visualize that for the benefit of all sentient beings, I'm breathing in my own problems. Think of a problem that is your greatest problem. Start off with something that really bothers you. And then, of course, based on the motivation for the benefit of others, you breathe in like this problem, whatever problem it is, maybe self-doubt or self-hatred, whatever it is. You breathe it in the form of dark light, and then all your other positive qualities, your Buddha nature, that's located in your heart, it streams out these positive qualities. And so breathing in the dark smoke of this problem, it is destroyed in your self-centeredness, and in its place, your Buddha nature and so forth emanates out, all good qualities, enhancing them. So you can start doing it in that way, starting with yourself. And if you're ready to do it for others, you start with one person you really care for. Maybe your son, your daughter, your siblings, your parents, your friends, anyone. Start with that person. Think of a problem they have and take it even further. Think of all their problems, their limitations, their sufferings, their afflictive emotions, and do the visualization. And then take in more and more and more. You just need to do it and get the benefit of this. And this is said to be so powerful. There are a lot of accounts of some of the great practitioners who healed themselves from serious diseases, for instance. They would visualize that there are a few accounts of people having leprosy, that they did this practice so intensely for extended periods of time. And in some cases, they were free of leprosy at some point. Others using it for diseases such as cancer. So to visualize that all the problems, all the suffering of other sentient beings dissolve into your heart, destroys the self-centeredness and the disease, and then all this positive energy going out, healing yourself and healing others. So such is the power of the mind that if one does this intensely and over a longer period of time, it has a very healing effect. And it can actually also affect others in a positive way. If we have a strong karmic connection with someone, in some cases, it is possible that it may affect another person. Anyway, most important is to do this practice, and we can do it anywhere. That's the good thing. You can do it while you're in a traffic jam. You can do it, wherever. You don't need to be totally focused on something else. When you're on autopilot, you can do this practice, and it's so rewarding. It's again one of those things where, although you visualize taking on the suffering of all sentient beings, it mainly benefits yourself, which is good. I mean, it benefits us in a positive way that spiritually it helps us to transform our mind, gives us more inner strength, self-confidence, more courage to do something for others. Anyway, the best thing to do is to practice it together here, right now. So to give you a taste of it, for many of you, of course, are familiar with it, but just in case you're not, let's do it together. And of course, then to really make an effort to practice this. This is so powerful, especially at the times right now, the times many of you Israelis are going through. So this is such a powerful practice, and you will only find out if you actually do it. All right. Now, I leave it up to you which of these versions you want to do. 3 versions are basically described, I have described. So you can start with yourself, as I mentioned before, taking on the suffering, like your own suffering, and focus on that. As I said, breathing in. And so during the meditation, I won't speak, which is why I'll speak right now. So breathing in your own problems, focusing on a particular problem, breathing it in the form of black smoke, entering the center of your chest, which is described as the heart, not the organ heart, but the heart as described in the scriptures. So the center, or your heart chakra, if you like. Breathing in that problem, it destroys the self-centeredness, and out of our Buddha essence, our Buddha nature, again located in the center of our heart, breathing out all the positive aspects coming from that destroys, or no, so sorry, having destroyed our problem, so now all the positive qualities come out and increase all our abilities that we already have right now. If you take the practice to focus on another person, you may start with one person or a few people, and of course, as a third possibility, take in all sentient beings. All right, and here again, very much focusing on the fact that on a superficial level, yes, there are huge differences, but on a deeper level, everyone has Buddha nature, everyone has the potential to change. And when we take in, what we take in are all their limitations, their afflictive emotions, and of course all the suffering they give rise to. All right, so it's up to you which version you want to do, but let's practice it together. And I only speak, so we won't do breathing meditation as at the beginning, no need, because we're breathing anyway. One last thing that sometimes people ask me about, it's difficult to visualize all this in one breath, but just be convinced that you've just taken on the suffering of other sentient beings. Get the sense, I've just taken it on, without the visualization being clear. It takes some time for this visualization to become clearer, but just think, I've just taken on the suffering of others. I've just given my happiness as you breathe in and out. All right, so let's do this. And I only talk when we dedicate again. Okay. Now to conclude this Donglen meditation, generate a sense of joy that we focused on giving and taking that way. And possibly made a difference, not just to ourselves, but also others. By training our mind towards benefiting other sentient beings. So that now it hopefully influences our actions of body, speech, and mind. And let's then dedicate all the positive potential we've accumulated together here towards our own awakening, by thinking that may this become one of the many causes we need to accumulate to one day become fully awakened, to actualize our fullest potential, so that we can effectively inspire and guide others to reach the same state. In the meantime, may our positive potential help our teachers to have a long and healthy life. Our teachers means our great spiritual masters, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, to have a long life so that they can continue to guide us through their examples and their teachings. And lastly, may whatever virtue we've accumulated benefit beings right here and right now. May have a positive impact, in particular on the situation in Israel right now. Even if just in a subtle way, may it bring some peace, inner peace, to everyone involved. And keep people safe and reduce their pain and sufferings. So with this in mind, let's recite the dedication prayers. Through the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All-powerful Chinrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Okay, thank you very much. And have a good evening, a good day. And see you again next week. Be safe.
Thank you, Geshe-ma.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Thank you.